sufficient sleep is critical when it comes to optimizing your mind, body, performance, and overall well-being. And we all know this, yet for many of us, rest and recovery is pretty far down the priorities list. And even for those who do prioritize sleep, our lives are filled with so much stimulation that it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to unwind and relax and switch off from the chaos which is life in order to fall and remain asleep. So the purpose of today's video is to go through some very simple and effective strategies that you can implement to improve both the quantity and the quality of your sleep. So tip 1, be consistent. If you can establish a consistent sleep time and wake up time, this will act as an anchor to improve both the quality and the quantity of your sleep. Your body will start to become attuned to falling asleep at a particular time, and your circadian rhythm, which is essentially your body's internal clock which regulates your sleep-wake cycle, will become aligned, which promotes restorative sleep. Tip 2, view natural sunlight in the morning. Getting outside and viewing sunlight every morning for at least 2 to 10 minutes upon waking can be helpful for 2 reasons. 1, it triggers a healthy level of cortisol release, which acts as a wake-up signal and promotes alertness and focus throughout the day. And 2, it sets an internal timer for the release of melatonin in about 12 to 14 hours, and this is a hormone which makes us feel sleepy. So by viewing natural sunlight first thing in the morning, you're setting these 2 timers into motion. One for wakefulness, which starts immediately, and the other for sleepiness, which starts closer to bedtime. Tip 3, turn down the temperature. So it turns out your body needs to drop its core temperature by about 1 degree Celsius in order for you to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep, which is why you'll always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold compared to a room that's too hot. So the research suggests that the most ideal sleeping temperature for most people is around 18 degrees Celsius, which is colder than you might think. And a little follow-up tip, if you have a warm shower or bath before bed, the drop in body temperature that you experience when you get out essentially replicates the drop in temperature that your body requires to fall asleep, and this can induce a state of sleepiness. Tip 4, establish a consistent bedtime routine. If you're able to find some relaxing activities which you can carry out consistently each night before bed, such as reading, listening to music, guided mindfulness meditation, getting things ready for the day ahead, having a warm shower, or whatever it might be, you'll start to associate these activities with falling asleep and will essentially learn to become sleepy when you go through this routine. If you're familiar with Pavlov's dog, which is where a dog learnt to associate the ringing of a bell with food and then began to salivate when he heard the bell even when there is no food, you'll know that we learn by making associations between things. And if we can learn to associate particular activities with falling asleep, then we'll start to become sleepy and ready for bed when we go through them. Tip 5, keep it dark. So this is where I would recommend minimizing your exposure to bright screens and artificial lights in the lead up before bed. Or, as a compromise, turning down the brightness on your phones and computers and sitting a bit further back from the TV if possible. If you find yourself scrolling on your phone right up until bedtime and subsequently find it hard to fall asleep, getting into the habit of reading or listening to an audiobook, podcast, or music in the 30 minutes or so before bed will likely be beneficial. What can also be helpful is dimming down the lights in your room or starting to turn off other lights in the house in the lead up before bed, as this can promote the release of melatonin, which makes us feel sleepy. One more thing here is that if you wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom or for whatever reason, try to avoid turning on lights or looking at bright screens such as your phone, as this can act as a wake-up signal for your brain and body and make it harder for you to fall back asleep. Tip 6, if you can't sleep, get up and try again. If you can't fall asleep and are just lying there getting frustrated at your inability to sleep, the research shows that the best thing that you can do is to get up, do something relaxing such as reading a simple book or listening to calming music, and then once you start to feel sleepy, go back to bed and give sleep another try. As I've already mentioned, we learn by making associations between things. And if we start to associate our bed with feelings of frustration and wakefulness, we're ultimately going to make it harder for ourselves to fall asleep. And this is why it's recommended that we also avoid doing stimulating activities whilst in bed, such as work or study, because if we start to associate our bed with feelings of alertness and stress, this will not be conducive to peaceful sleep. Tip 7, consider removing clocks and phones from the bedroom, or put them out of reach. It can be helpful for many people to remove clocks from the bedroom, for the sole reason that if you're having a rough night's sleep, it is never helpful to know that it's 4:37 a.m. and nearly time to start getting ready for work. And if you have a tendency to reach for your phone when you wake up in the middle of the night, which as I mentioned will likely make it harder for you to fall back asleep, especially if you start scrolling through social media, consider putting your phone in a different room or having it out of reach so that you're less tempted to use it. Tip 8, limit your intake of alcohol and caffeine, especially in the lead up before bed, and be mindful of napping. As I discussed in my previous sleep video, while some people rely on alcohol as a sleep aid and some people can fall asleep just fine with caffeine in their system, both of these substances can significantly affect the quality of our sleep, meaning that we'll spend less time in the deeper and more restorative stages of sleep. So, whilst we may be able to fall asleep, stay asleep, and get a sufficient amount of sleep with alcohol or caffeine in our systems, we will likely wake up feeling unrefreshed as the quality of our sleep has been disrupted. And with napping, some people can nap during the day and fall asleep just fine, but others may find themselves wide awake and staring at the ceiling all night. If this is you, consider limiting your napping to 20 to 30 minutes and avoid napping within 7 hours of your bedtime so that it's less likely to adversely affect your sleep at night. Tip 9, exercise, but not right before bed. Regular exercise can be a powerful means of providing us with natural energy throughout the day and making us feel sleepy at night. However, consider avoiding particularly strenuous activity right before bed, as this can make us feel stimulated and energized, which is not conducive to falling asleep. Tip 10, carbs before bed. So this may seem counterintuitive considering carbohydrates are the body's primary energy source. However, if you think back to the last time you had a big bowl of pasta for dinner, consuming carbs within 4 hours of bedtime can actually make us feel quite sleepy. And this is because carbs can increase our levels of serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that makes us feel calm and happy and content. And in addition, serotonin can be converted into melatonin, which as we know induces a state of sleepiness and regulates our sleep-wake cycle. As a side note, many people avoid eating carbs at night because of the myth that it promotes fat storage, which is blatantly untrue. Carbohydrate timing actually has zero effect on weight loss or gain. What matters is the total amount that you're getting. And current research is suggesting that it can actually be optimal to go lower carb and higher fat in the morning and throughout the day, as this can promote more consistent energy and focus, and go higher carb at night to promote relaxation before bed. And finally, tip 11, anxiety reduction techniques. Many of us struggle to fall asleep at night because our minds are racing with the day's events, and those with anxious tendencies in particular may overthink things and get caught in these never-ending negative thought spirals. Something to keep in mind is that it's very difficult to control the mind with the mind, and this will often lead us to going around in circles. And if that's the case, it can be helpful to turn to the body to calm the mind. A few examples of this are: 1, controlled breathing. Whilst there are countless effective breathing strategies out there, a really simple and calming one is just to breathe in for 3 seconds and out for 3 seconds, and repeat. 2, progressive muscle relaxation. So this involves actively tensing and releasing each muscle group to promote physical relaxation by reducing tension in the body. And 3, guided mindfulness meditation or yoga nidra, which means yoga sleep. And if you download one of the following apps or search any of these terms on YouTube, there are plenty of recordings available which will guide you through these kinds of exercises without you having to think. A lot of them are only about 5 minutes long and can really have a profound impact on your ability to fall asleep and remain asleep. And finally, something else that the worriers out there might find helpful is journaling, or even just writing down a few dot points about what's going on in your head. This can be quite a therapeutic outlet, and writing a thought down where it's tangible and you can see it can stop it from going round and round in circles in your head. So those are my top 11 tips when it comes to improving your sleep. Check out my previous sleep video to learn about how a lack of sleep affects the brain, how sleep works, the different stages of sleep and their functions, and the effects of caffeine, alcohol, and napping on your sleep.